It is the 15th of January 1979. In Britain, the dead are lying unburied and rubbish lines the streets as a national strike grips the country. In Pennsylvania, an emergency is declared following a radiation leak from the nuclear plant at 3 Mile Island. And in Iran, months of unrest have caused a crippling national strike that all but destroys the economy. The once emerging superpower is now under strict martial law. The country's future lies in the outcome of a desperate battle for power between two men and two ideologies. One is the reigning monarch, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The other is an exiled Muslim priest orchestrating a revolution from a bungalow in the suburbs of Paris. It is 5 a.m. and the Ayatollah Khomeini is about to embark on another busy day of press interviews. He's 78, but is a tireless opponent of the Shah. The two men have been enemies since his outspoken criticisms of the Shah's regime led to his exile 15 years ago. Even though Khomeini's current home is in Paris, he is still regarded as one of Iran's leading religious figures. He hopes to persuade Iranians to depose the Shah, even if it means bringing the country to its knees. In Tehran, the Shah is under intense pressure from all sides to leave both his throne and his country. Although he's been king for almost 4 decades, for the last year people have been staging violent protests against his absolutist rule. He is now a virtual prisoner in his own palace. The Shah's outward calm belies an inner turmoil. He maintains his usual routine, breakfasting on black coffee and toast, but even his Great Dane Benno is subdued, seeming to sense that something is wrong. There has been 5 months of martial law on the streets of Tehran, banning meetings and enforcing a nightly curfew. But every night, the shouts of the protesters reach the Shah and his wife, the Empress Farah. He had thought there was a sacred bond between him and his people. He simply cannot understand their hatred. Tonight, their favored chant is "God is great, death to the Shah." The Shah came to power in 1941, and with his wife Farah, Empress of Iran, they present themselves as a modern, westernized royal family. The Shah is one of the richest men in the world and thinks of himself as a dedicated leader at a difficult time in Iran's history, as within his lifetime, he is attempting to impose something that has taken Western Europe centuries to achieve, the change from a feudal state to a modern industrial nation. Using the huge wealth afforded him from the country's vast oil revenues, his reforms have been too fast. The economy has overheated. People have piled into the overcrowded cities looking for work, only to find poverty. He flaunts his admiration of the West, has banned the veil for women, and so aggravated the Muslim clergy. Ayatollah Khomeini and his aide Ibrahim Yazdi take their daily walk through the streets of suburban Paris and discuss their strategy for ousting the Shah. Yazdi has sacrificed a great deal to be here. He is an American citizen who has left behind a young family and a high-flying career as a medical professor in Texas.
Khomeini contacted me and asked me to come, and I felt happy to support him. For me, there was nothing more important than supporting an Islamic revolution and liberating my people.
Amir Pershoja, the Shah's loyal valet for the last 12 years, has noticed him becoming increasingly thin and haggard. He wonders if the rumors of cancer are true. This has been a royal secret. In fact, the Shah has been receiving medical treatment for lymphatic cancer for the last 5 years, but the country has not been told for fear of making the monarch seem weak. His condition has been worsening. He has lost a third of his body weight in the last year. The Shah reads all the papers each morning before he takes any appointments. The newspapers have played their own part in the current troubles. It's almost exactly a year since Etalat, the daily paper, published an article accusing Ayatollah Khomeini of being immoral and old-fashioned. The Shah controls the media, and it's been done with his consent. Inflamed by the article, the Ayatollah supporters attacked symbols of Western modernity, girls' schools, restaurants, and cinemas. Troops opened fire on unarmed demonstrators, and 30 are killed in the city of Qom. It's the first display of civil disobedience in 15 years, and soon escalates into regular demonstrations and unrest. In March 1978, a week into the rioting, the Shah summons his generals to resolve the crisis. They tell him Iran is on the brink of revolution. Their solution is an immediate military crackdown and estimate that thousands may die as a result. The Shah says he cannot condone the death of his people and turns them down. The generals see this as a critical error of judgment. The violence and bloodshed has continued to escalate over the last year. Mimu Samimi, a secretary at the court ministry, is making her way to work. It's a 4-mile trip across Tehran. She's worried about telling the taxi driver her destination, as some who work for the Shah have been kidnapped, so she gives him an address round the corner from her work. Walls are covered in graffiti, and troops are stationed all around the city. Tehran feels like a war zone.
There was a horrible tension in the streets. Dissatisfaction and frustration could be read clearly on people's faces. Every day I saw evidence that the link between the regime and the people no longer existed. Yet my job in the Empress's private office seemed unreal in comparison with what I was experiencing in the streets.
The Empress has decided that it's no longer safe for their children to stay in Iran. So she has arranged to fly them to America with the royal valet. They leave for the airport this morning. She doesn't know when she will see them again.
Those last days before the children's departure had been terrible. At only 8 years old, Layla didn't seem to be aware of the dreadful tension. But Ali Reza did not hide his uneasiness. I had put their departure off till the last minute, sensing that it would mean the end of a family life that had given us so much happiness.
At the airport, they have their papers checked by an immigration officer whose manner is offhand. In a deliberate breach of royal etiquette, he calls them by their first names, which shocks the valet and the children. Princess Layla looks close to tears. The valet cannot help thinking that even amongst officials and the army, the tide has turned against the monarchy. At Khomeini's headquarters in Paris, Ibrahim Yazdi's first task of the day is to be briefed by a rota of volunteers. They are international students who analyze the world's press and assess Khomeini's popularity and position. Today they are pleased because a number of articles have been written about Khomeini, most of them favorable. Yazdi takes notes before heading over the road to Khomeini's bungalow to brief him. Khomeini only speaks Persian. This makes Yazdi a crucial link between him and the outside world. In Tehran, as Minu arrives at work, she hopes that today the rumors of the Shah's departure will be confirmed. Because of her job, she has been expected to show loyalty to the Shah. She has come to work every day, despite the dangers.
During the last year, the letters addressed to the Empress from all over the world, which landed on my desk, bore witness to the fact that the foreign media had taken political unrest in Iran far more seriously than the Shah and his security police. If only the Shah would agree to withdraw from the political arena, become a constitutional monarch, and put an end to absolutism. If only he would announce free elections so that opposition groups could be represented in parliament. Why was he holding back?
The Shah, who prides himself on his links with the West, is surrounded by advisors who have been telling him what he wants to hear. They say that nobody will take Khomeini seriously, because the West will respect a man in a suit more than a bearded mullah. This proves to be a spectacular miscalculation. In contrast, Khomeini seems to have an intuitive understanding of Western public opinion. This morning, he's giving his 132nd interview in the 3 months he has been in France.
In current regime, there is no democracy. But we're going to establish new kind of democracy, Islamic democracy in Iran.
He's careful to present himself as a moderate and pious man, and is winning favor with the European and US media. Minu is at her desk, but there's no work to do. She usually coordinates all requests for royal visits, but the Shah has been unable to leave the palace. So Minu discusses the political situation. The strikes are getting worse. There are queues everywhere. There is no petrol or heating, and it's the coldest winter on record. A month before, revolutionaries stormed Minu's office building. The young fundamentalists have mistaken the building for the headquarters of Savak, Iran's secret police. They discover most of the workers are women, so rip down the office curtains and force them on as makeshift veils. Minu is terrified. Khomeini is recording his daily speech. His methods of communication are ingenious. His speeches are recorded on audio cassette and played down the phone to over 9,000 mosques all around Iran. Within 5 hours of his broadcast, people on the streets of Iran are hearing his sermons on black market cassettes or reading the text on bill posters on every street corner. It has been said that his method of communication is more effective than a computer. Ironically, the Shah has played into Khomeini's hands. Through exile in France, he now has excellent phone contact with Iran. The Shah has also inadvertently provided him with an army of well-educated students. They were the first to benefit from the free education he introduced in Iran, and the first in turn to be alienated by the lack of intellectual freedoms. Through his sermons and speeches, Khomeini has played his part in choreographing the rising unrest in Iran. He tells people where and when to demonstrate. Huge numbers of students and women wearing the veil are regularly seen protesting peacefully. 2 months after the newspaper article criticizing Khomeini, a huge demonstration calls publicly for the deposing of the Shah. After 4 decades of authoritarian rule, this is both bold and shocking. Between March and September 1978, the unrest gets more frequent and more serious. The Shah's military advisors fear that the mullahs may be planning to march on the palace. they finally persuade the Shah to impose martial law. This comes into force on the 7th of September. Within 24 hours, a huge demonstration has been organized in Jaleh Square, which turns into one of the most notorious events of the revolution. The 8th of September becomes known as Black Friday. So many people fill the square that the crowds become crushed and panic ensues. The army, equipped with neither riot gear nor tear gas, fires live bullets directly into the crowd. "200 people are killed."
On Jaleh Square and Jaleh Street, where demonstrators shouting virulent slogans against the Shah had been tear-gassed and fired on by troops in the morning, all appeared...
This tragedy triggers a national strike that is to cripple the country's economy and destroy its leader.
After the curfew started, there were reports of continuing gunfire in the south and east of the city. Official figures broadcast in the early evening admitted 58 people killed and 205 injured. But hospital sources suggest this is an understatement. According to the early morning announcement of martial law in Tehran and 11 other cities...
Yazdi sees Black Friday as a tragedy but also an opportunity to gather further support for Khomeini. Many of the strikes that happen over the next few months are coordinated from Paris. It's no coincidence that the one service that never strikes is the Iranian phone company. By November, the country is in meltdown. The Shah responds by sacking his government, admitting to his mistakes, and promising to devolve his powers and take up the role of constitutional monarch. It is too little too late. Khomeini responds by saying, in one hand the Shah holds a letter of repentance for his crime, but in the other he holds a bayonet and a machine gun. On November the 9th, the American ambassador in Tehran, William Sullivan, advises President Carter by telegram that the Shah is finished. The State Department urges support for the Shah be swiftly withdrawn in favor of a new regime. At the start of December, 1.5 million people crowd onto the streets of Tehran. It's the biggest demonstration in Iran's history. The Shah finally realizes that he has lost the support of his people and that he must relinquish his grasp on power. Thinking the people want yet more freedoms, he asks Shapur Bakhtiar, a liberal opponent, to form a government. Bakhtiar agrees to become prime minister on the condition the Shah leave Iran in order to calm the situation. The Shah has no choice but to agree. They set a departure date for the 16th of January. At 5 p.m. on the 15th of January, the Empress makes one of her last official engagements. She thanks her staff for their loyalty and gives gifts of cards and imperial coins. It's a poor reward.
I wondered afterwards about the gigantic empty plane they flew out on, and wondered why Her Majesty, who could arrange for the rescue of her trunks, correspondence and files, could not arrange for us to fill some of the empty seats. What she did was to tell us not to give up hope and to wait for her, for she was sure to be back soon.
Time has run out for the Shah and the Empress. The moment of their departure has finally arrived. 2 helicopters in the palace grounds wait to take them to the airport. The servants who have stayed on at the palace line up to give their good wishes. Their final act before leaving Iran is to tell the press that they need a holiday and that this trip will be an opportunity for the Shah to receive medical treatment. It is the first time they refer to the Shah's illness in public. They give the impression that their departure will be temporary and their stay abroad will be short. They express hope for a peaceful Iran. They pass under the Quran, as is the custom before a long journey. The wintry day fits the mood of the crowd. Their supporters can barely contain their emotions. An officer in the Imperial Guard breaks etiquette by kissing the Shah's hand. As they mount the steps to the plane, onlookers see tears in the Shah's eyes. In a final flourish of royal bravado, the Shah takes the controls of his own Boeing 707 called Shaheen, or Falcon, and flies himself out of Iran for the last time.
The Shah's long-awaited departure, probably one of the most significant royal exits in history, took place quietly but amid the characteristic confusion of the past 2 days. As soon as word spread, drivers in cars and lorries honked their horns in a blaring celebration.
Within an hour of their departure, people take to the streets and tear the Shah's picture from the middle of banknotes.
In the present political upheaval in Iran, which has pushed the Shah out, finally, it's hardly likely that he can return.
In Paris, students listening to shortwave radio race to break the news to Yazdi.
من خوشحالم باید جشن گرفت و این بهترین موقعیت برای ماست. عالیه، بهتر از این نمیشه. واقعا عالیه.
2 weeks later, Ayatollah Khomeini returns to Iran, despite pleas from the Bakhtiar government to stay away. Yazdi fills the plane with dozens of journalists to record the historic journey.
We took them as a human shield. We knew that no one would try to shoot at the plane if they were there. Before we left Paris, a friend of mine sent 3 bulletproof jackets for us from America. Khomeini didn't want to put his on, and it was my job to persuade him.
Within days, Khomeini undermines and destroys Bakhtiar's interim government and spends the next decade ruling Iran. During this time, he is responsible for the execution of 10,000 people and an exodus of 2.5 million Iranian citizens. Minu Samini and her colleagues are all held prisoner for 2 weeks and undergo interrogation by Khomeini's militia. She is eventually smuggled out of Iran to start a new life in London. Ibrahim Yazdi is later renounced by Khomeini for his part in trying to resolve the US embassy siege. He later expresses regrets about his role in the revolution. Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi never again sets foot in Iran. After 18 months as a wandering exile, he dies in Egypt in July 1980. Radio Tehran announces his death with the words, "The bloodsucker of the century is dead."